Yeah, I first saw true header shield exhaust wrapping on really high-end builds and race cars, and the prices were pretty extravagant for that, almost the same cost as the headers themselves. But the tests they did showed it was extremely helpful in reducing heat coming off the headers. And I did some research and found a bunch of German language videos of people doing this in Europe. This is some kind of silicon carbide 1/4-inch insulation blanket. It was $60 on Amazon, and this should do 2 headers and my whole exhaust system with plenty left over. Crack smoking lighter. I can feel more heat coming around the edges onto my thumb and pinky than I can on my palm right now. So you can see how incredibly effective this is as a heat insulation. However, you can also see it's completely fragile and would turn to dust in a matter of minutes on an actually running engine. So we're wrapping it with corrugated stainless foil. This is 0.1 millimeter thick, ostensibly. This is very difficult to find in the US. All the guys in Europe are buying it from their speed shop, but the shipping was more than the cost of the material itself. It was vastly more expensive than just buying these small sheets, which I found on eBay. I called various suppliers too on the internet that I found that supplied it, and I couldn't get anybody to sell it to me in any larger bulk, but thankfully it's not that expensive either. These sheets are about $20 a piece. So far I'm going to end up using 3 of these on one shorty header, and who knows how much on the rest of the large exhaust system. This one is almost done. I like the look. It looks like chainmail. This is interesting. This is where I used non-corrugated stainless foil because you could get it off Amazon and it was even cheaper for the straight sections, but I think it looks terrible. I'm just going to put another layer of this on it, and so it's all uniform looking, but it's the same. It's doing the same thing, and the stainless is so thin, there's no real heat protection from the stainless itself. The stainless is just to protect and encapsulate the insulation so it doesn't get wet, mildew, fall apart, get wrecked. At least that's how I feel about it. You're not getting any kind of real heat rejection from that thin of metal, no matter what it's made of, even if it's Inconel. So it's not very expensive. It's incredibly effective, which leaves us with the downside. It is incredibly time consuming to do this. I was kind of hoping after I got a few patterns made that it would be a little more assembly line to do this, but every single one of these ends up being a custom cut. It just does, and it takes forever. I don't know how many hours. I don't keep track of stuff like that, but a while. It's kind of soothing though, you know, cutting patterns, building a jigsaw puzzle out of it. And I think it looks kick-ass too. We're attaching these by spot welding them with a MIG welder. It's an extremely simple process, and it works incredibly well. We'll go over that later. So I started off making some paper patterns. They all kind of follow this, I don't know what you would call that, a snake swallowing a rodent shape. And it starts off easy enough on these particular headers. We just have a 3-inch pipe. And so I'm just making these paper patterns that all transfer to the insulation. And another thing that makes it so time consuming is you have to make 2 patterns for everything. One for the insulation and one for the stainless shield. You can't, you know, they don't end up being the same pattern. It's kind of annoying. So you can see I've kind of formed this, I'll have these cuts in it. And then that's how we'll start attaching it. Probably the most important part of this process is you've got to have a very just clean and uncluttered work area where your mind can stay focused and there's no distractions and it's easy to find everything. So that's how I've set up my work area here. to be sort of almost a Zen style, where it's just me and the material and the bare minimum of what I need to get something done. So as you can see, I've cut these into patterns that I first made with paper. I said before you couldn't reuse the patterns, but this is one spot where you can reuse the same pattern because it's a very uniform shape. So I formed these. The guys in Europe had this stuff with adhesive backing, which would be very convenient, but this is almost as easy. This is just your standard 3M adhesive spray. Doesn't need to be super strong, it just needs to hold it on long enough to put the jacket on it. And I presume anyway, the first time you fire up the car, the glue and all its chemicals will bake off, you know, within a reasonable amount of time. That's yet to be seen exactly how that'll go down, but like most of these adhesive sprays, you want to give it 30 seconds to get tacky. Okay, that's good enough. Not like we're putting a headliner in a 1967 Porsche or something. Did they have headliners? Did they have glued-in headliners? I don't know. My 67 Mustang had a headliner. You had to remove the front and rear glass to replace it. Stupidest thing I ever saw. Well, not the stupidest thing I ever saw. Akiro Nakira-san. You'll see here I didn't make it quite long enough. There's a little void, but it's very easy to just stick another piece on there. I think I used the wrong side. Yep. So you can see it's a pretty forgiving process. You're not doing anything super meticulous here. This is the easy part, actually. Like any insulation, I'm sure the less seams and separation you have, the more effective it's going to be, obviously, but just got to do your best. You'll see in some of those European videos, you'll see the guys where the whole header is covered with this material first before they start on the jacket. I would advise against that because you're flipping it, you're moving it, this stuff just gets torn up. So I definitely recommend doing it as you go along. And this stuff's very compressible too. You can, or if you feel like you didn't get enough coverage when you put the jacket, I'll show you when the jacket's on, you can just stuff more into it if you don't like the gaps. Now I probably should have Yeah, I definitely should have left a little more. I got fooled by looking at that one, because you want the edge of the jacket to actually attach. For the most part, the jacket attaches to itself, but at some point you want it to actually attach to the header, so you need to leave not just metal for it to weld onto, but enough room so it can, you know, cover the edge. So this is the infamous stainless foil, 0.1 millimeter thick. You can find it on eBay. Is the only place I found it in the US, and like I said, at least it's reasonable. But you can actually cut it with scissors, but you should definitely wear gloves. It'll cover your hands with micro cuts. You should also always wear gloves with this. It's just like fiberglass. It'll make your hands itch like crazy. So you can see I've laid out my pattern, which I made out of cardboard first, working with the natural curl for whatever that's worth. You have to watch out when you buy this stuff too, because they sell a lot of stuff that looks exactly like this, but it's aluminum. Which, as it turns out, is actually kind of adequate as a heat shield, because these thicknesses, what matters more is reflectivity than conductivity through the metal itself. The only thing is, you wouldn't be able to weld it. I did see one guy on our Porsche forum who actually wrapped it like tape around it, but I mean, bottom line is the aluminum is just not going to be strong. It's going to get trashed on in an engine bay, in my opinion, over time. And, you know, I don't care what the computer says, it's still stainless, not aluminum. So we'll see how this fits. So I think I did a better job on that one, leaving myself space. Right now I don't have any other jacket to weld it to, so I'm going to try to weld it directly to the pipe. One thing that does help a lot on this is to cut reliefs. I like to overwrap the ends a little bit, but that's way too much. And I could carefully mark exactly where I should cut it and very carefully line that up, but this is kind of there's a lot more leeway in this process than some things. You don't have to get super uptight about your fabrication. I'm going to overlap that maybe more than I might because it's the first piece going on here. I want it to hold. Alright. Now what you've been waiting for, the magic. Standard MIG welder. I've turned the wire speed all the way to the bottom. I've turned the amperage all the way to the bottom. I've taken the wire out of it. I just took a normal tip and ground it with the flap disc to kind of a, not a point, but a wedge. Don't even need to wear it. You don't need gas on. You don't even need a helmet. This might look a little awkward just because it's the very first piece I'm putting on. Actually, I'm kidding. They're all awkward. That's why it takes so long. So I will just press into this and hold as much pressure as I can. And then just and that's pretty cool. The only thing is you have to use a lot of judgment. Right here, the metal's still cold. It's two pieces right against each other. There's a lot of pressure behind them, so you can put them tight. So you put comparatively more time into the trigger. If it's kind of floating over here and you've got two pieces that aren't fitting quite right, then it's very, or if the metal's hot, it's very quick. And if you're welding direct to the header, then of course, conversely, you're in there a lot longer. And if there's anything damaging to the welder from doing this, I haven't seen it yet. So now I'm going to try and weld this edge to the header itself. I'm not interfering with the V-band, which is always something I worry about. That spark is, you get that when there's an air gap, when you haven't gotten it completely flush on the metal. And it's not really, you know, super critical to make some kind of, you know, massive join, because as you add more layers, more jacket, and work your way up the header, everything self-reinforces, like building a three-dimensional structure versus a two-dimensional structure. So again, it's not like some super critical process that I get every single millimeter of this thing tacked down. Yes, in theory, you know, you'd want it to be airtight. I guess that's kind of the whole point, but I mean, there's no way this is going to be airtight completely anyway. Watertight, I guess we should say. Yeah, that's where I've got insulation stuck between the jacket and the header. And then you can see I've got a little bit of rise here where it doesn't really want to go down to meet the metal at all. And you can kind of, especially because I cut those reliefs, you can kind of brute force it. Also, if you are fighting spring back in the metal, like you're really trying to clamp something down, after you release the trigger, you want to hold it, give it a second to cool, just like any little spot welding thing that you would do. Yeah, see now here I've gotten too much space in here. I'll show you how I deal with that. I mean, you can certainly spend a lot more time on it. I think on my first one I probably did, and that's why that one came out pretty nice. This one I'm probably doing a little more crudely. So yeah, what I'll do here is cheat a little bit. Take out my favorite tool. obviously cut a little relief into it. See, now even with that janky little bit of welding, that jacket's tight on there. I mean, you're not getting that off there without taking the grinder to it. And it's a good foundation now for the next pattern, which, like I said, this is the easiest part of the whole header. I can use the same pattern all the way up it. What really made, when I first started doing this, I thought, oh, I just got to make one corner pattern I'll reuse for every curve, because these are all the same curve, obviously. But what I didn't realize at the time is with this thick insulation, anytime these pipes are close together, that screws up your whole shebang, and you got to fit custom everything. And as you can see, most of the header is too close together to do that easy wrapping. So that's what takes so long, and transitioning, you know. Again, I've cut relief cuts on both edges so I can help shape it. And right now I'm just welding it to the first layer that we put on. So it's overlapped maybe 3/8 of an inch to the other layer. And then it's always a good idea to, rather than joining them, to come back around from the other side. You don't want to get carried away. You always want to keep looking at both sides. It's easy to get one side perfect and then come around the other side and be completely screwed. Notice how much my trigger time varies, and that's just feel. You just pick it up as you go along. If you're already good at welding thin little pieces of metal, that helps. If you've ever MIG welded sheet metal before. I should say body panels. And yes, the metal does get hot, which of course is why you should be wearing a glove. And you can see, like, if you're trying to be perfect, you can see I came in a little high here. It doesn't match up perfectly. But as I've been saying, it doesn't really matter. And you know, you're looking at this metal too, the corrugations don't always fit together very well, so you're always looking for a spot where, you know, it actually touches. And then obviously I've gotten the edges here and stuff, but where it overlaps, you can always just go in the middle like this. And that gives you, you know, a real strong weld right there. And you can see, like, where this looks like hell. It's going to be easy. And it's it's visual anyway for something no one will ever see. But just for my own peace of mind, I'll just make a little patch that goes over this, kind of like you see. I kind of threw a little patch here too. It's really easy to do, and that's what saves you from a lot of mistakes or getting these things covered. You can see, if you look closely, you can see kind of all sorts of places where I just kind of finished up where it didn't quite get together. And that's it. We'll probably do one more segment when we're doing the hard parts, but that's the gist of the process. It's simple but not easy. One other thing I wanted to mention is you can see you're reducing your spark plug clearance even more so. These headers were no picnic as it was, and now it's even worse. On the stand, looking directly at it with hand tools, I can get the plugs in and out. But in the engine bay, I don't know, I've almost resigned myself to, if I need to swap spark plugs or check something, I'll just drop the whole exhaust system. It's all V-banded and then just the bolts, so that's something to look out for. And the other thing I was going to do, and this is now finished, is actually smear the whole thing, put on a plastic glove and smear the whole thing with a big load of silicone. And that'll do a couple things. It'll smooth out some of these rough edges, give it kind of a uniform coverage, and also waterproof it more so than it might be now. That should really help seal it up. I mean, I'm going to experiment with that first. It's probably going to look kind of bad by the time you do that, even with clear silicone, so not that that should matter. Anyway, I'm going to experiment with that. It's an idea I had. Smear it with silicone. And then once you did that, you could even try painting it if you wanted. I don't think I'm going to, but that's all I wanted to say.